I can't wait for that wonderfully desynchronized clap, as always. Yeah. All right. We'll go on three. We don't actually need everyone to clap anyway, but clap on three, not after three, but on three. Three, not after three, but on three. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Clap.
Yeah, there we go. As always. Hello and welcome to the last. Hello and welcome to The Last Standee, a board game podcast coming to you from 5 exciting countries all across Europe. This time we have a very special episode, and I'm joined here today by Alessio.
Hello.
Audrey.
Hey.
Hey.
I'm your host, Fen. But we are also joined today by two very special guests who've graciously agreed to talking with us for a while about the highly anticipated upcoming game, Sankokushin 5 Sacrifices. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves to our listeners.
All for Maxis Mundi games.
Okay, we are both the designers and the owner of the firm Maxis Mundi. And what do you want to say more about what
we do respectively in the games project? I am the owner of the company of the game as well as art director.
Yes.
And maybe I take a little more care of the game design part, the merely mechanical part of the cards and effects, while you.
While I look forward to write a lot of things regarding Sankokushin. I'm the main writer and lore designer. I can say so.
Yeah, lore designer sounds well.
Okay.
Of course, don't forget the part of game design, which is on your shoulders too as well.
Oh.
So, is this Sankokushin episode?
Yes.
It should be.
I guess so.
What kind of question is that? Of course it is.
I was just breaking ice.
No, actually, we had to say that we are the designer of Sankokushin, but I didn't think about that. That we are the designer of Sankokushin, but I didn't think about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something else entirely instead, yeah? There's a tease.
Twilight Imperium.
I won't play Twilight Imperium in my lifetime anymore.
Why?
Oh, because I'm a man in his 40s. I can't play a single game over a weekend anymore. I'm saying that for retirement.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk, which, I think we could all say everyone here is very excited about and has been anticipating it for a while. We got a bunch of things to ask, and we're going to start off with, Alessio, do you want to take us away?
Yes, of course. So, we do know where the accent goes in the name of the game, Sankokushin, and for the more kanji accustomed, how is it written?
Partially. This question has been around for a while, and with good reason, I must admit. I remember that you, Alessio, wrote something very accurate on Board Game Geek discussion about the game's name. So you certainly know that in Japanese language, two words may sound the same, but different writing may reveal different meanings. So the way or ways Sankokushin may be written is part of the game's plot, and for this reason we prefer to stay silent here. The only thing we can say is that the Sankokushin are actually a thing in the game's lore. They are 3 epic poems.
So I can go with Cruel Divinity until it's proven, right?
I remember. Your theory was started from the Zankoku in Evangelion's opening, right?
And Shin from 80s Kenshiro.
Yeah, Shin. We can we can say that Shin is the kanji of for kami, so God.
Yeah, I have a question. I've seen you be active a lot on Facebook because that's the platform where I get most of my information. And in the Sankokushin group, I see that you often publish the newsletters and you talk a lot. You engage in the and I wanted to know that if you plan to keep that kind of community engagement during the Kickstarter with maybe social stretch goals or community involvement to help you, for instance, decide between a pose A and pose B for a miniature, or decide between card A and card B at some point, these kind of things. Or
to do something like that. We are not new on Kickstarter as we previously did other campaigns, and we really like when people join us and create engagement. So perfectly, we are planning to do something like that for Sankokushin as well. About the miniatures, we are not thinking about that because when it comes to work on a miniature and deciding a pose, it's really difficult to find the perfect balance. So that's something we prefer to do on ourselves. But regarding some branches of the stories or something related to cards or some effects, yes, we are definitely trying to engage people. We have a lot of ideas to put on Sankokushin, but probably the core game can't really have all these ideas inside. So maybe we will go to our public and say we have these things. Which one you prefer most? And maybe the other one won't be discarded. At all. But maybe we should do something in the future with some expansion or something like that.
If I can take word here about the choice of miniature design, it is an interesting topic because allows us to speak a little more about how we work on models. You probably know that already. We are very strict and we put a lot of attention on even just which render to show publicly. We want during the Kickstarter campaign to be able to show the actual renders that will be produced, or at least what studying a miniature, engineering it, especially when it comes to HIPS technology. It has very, very specific requirements that cannot be left to the free choice of someone who isn't inside the engineering part of the miniatures. Social goals or choices that concern miniatures. They will be more focused on other elements of the game, such an idea for a card or a social bond,
for an artwork as well.
For an artwork that can be human or not, that we can make the bakers to choose.
So we can expect a stretch goal plan like So Long My Word.
Yes.
Oh, you are a baker of So Long My Word?
Yeah, actually I backed it, then switched to $1 pledge. Then switched to $1 pledge, then backed again, then got a friend buy it from me. I'm actually a big fan of your stories.
Oh.
Wonderful, man. I'm very honored.
Okay, we talked about the Kickstarter. Now let's talk about this distant future where the game is in our hands and we are joyously playing it. This not being our first ride with boss battle games, we know that they need to stay fresh to be at their best. So, what do you plan to do to release content after the KS is completed? Sell expansion directly, something else entirely?
Well, since Sankokushin is planned to be a hobby game, our idea is to proceed with regular online expansions at the moment. But it doesn't mean that we cannot consider more Kickstarters in the future. It all depends on how the Kickstarter goes in the near future. At the moment, we are planning to do the big Kickstarter, and we are planning to do some expansions at the moment.
Okay, so let's wrap up this as we definitely plan to keep releasing content. We'll see what and how we can do that after Kickstarter is completed.
Yeah.
Kickstarter is completed.
Yes.
You have no idea how happy it makes me to hear you describe it as being like the aim of a hobby game, which like I really like.
Respect this. You are, after all, very passionate of the most famous hobby game at the moment. So we are of the most famous hobby game at the moment. So we are. We thought that it could please you and many others, of course. We hope.
Yes. I've got several of your models around me right now, and they are some of the most beautiful sculpts I've ever had on my painting desk. Although it's a brand new painting desk, so take that from what you will. But I love them to pieces.
Thank you so much. Enrica doesn't know that, but Fan just showed me a shot of Biako that
Really?
is
I want to see it
painting,
now.
and she didn't see it yet. Allow me to find the photo. What do you think, Enrica, of Fan's work?
Ooh.
Beautiful, indeed.
Yes.
All your jobs.
Yes. Can't wait to see it.
Yes. All your jobs.
Yes. Can't wait to see it.
This is very early. This is before I start doing glazing, and I've got a tiger texture and everything. It's quite a challenge to paint. I've had to pull him back apart into a bunch of little pieces. This is without a doubt the best cat model I've ever painted, feline model, and I've painted quite a few.
So, looks like we are moving forward towards the miniatures hobby questions. And Fan showed quite a few amazing got sent. And who are the sculptures of the Sankokushin minis?
Oh yes, this is fun. Actually, this is a more fun question than how it looks, because many of the first models were sculpted. They are now under an upgrade process. Some have been already scrapped. To be honest, an example of this is Nene, one of the first heroes. Maybe most of them know what I'm speaking about. We had this model for one of the 4 stamping heroes, and we recently revealed that they completely resculpted her. So because the first model didn't satisfy us anymore, we are very very finicky when it comes to art direction, and we prefer to invest more than harming the overall quality, the artistic part of the game. That is happening with some of the other models as well. Another of the starting heroes, Tenzin, for example, we are sculpting the smoke coming from his boots. So maybe you noticed the one post we made on Facebook some days ago that were addressing this specific point. All of this to say that the sculptors actually changed during the development, and at the moment our main collaborator is Dmitry Zamulin. Is a very good friend and a real artist. We highly suggest to visit his art station. It's particularly easy to work with him, as our tastes are the same. So he's taking care of most of the models and helping us fixing the old models for the each IPS manufacturing. It's curious because some of the very first models were thought as PVC for a PVC manufacturing, but very early so we had to make some modification, and we are currently working on some of them thanks to our sculptor Dmitry. And of course, we shouldn't forget CA Sculpts, which you know for sure because he did all the models belonging to Death Goddess Izanami Kickstarter. You were a baker of the campaign, right, Audrey?
Yes.
But you didn't take Izanami. You take...
No, I had to make budget choices, and I prefer to support male that are not barbarian and are still bare chest.
Totally agree.
Yes.
Totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah. You talked about the HIPS, so which means high impact polystyrene, which is the type of plastic that you will be using for Sankokushin, which I remember seeing on Facebook a year ago or so some high impact polystyrene, which is the type of plastic that you will be using for Sankokushin, which I remember seeing on Facebook a year ago or so some posts where you said you weren't sure yet which plastic would be used for the miniatures. And are you able to explain what process led to the decision of using HIPS for the miniatures, please?
Yes, well, actually, this is quite simpler. When we decided to do the miniatures and we decided to work with Dmitry, he showed us a lot of beautiful models with a lot. Had in mind the idea to go with HAPS. But of course, there were a lot of thinking about that because it's expensive, and also it's the engineering part is a bit difficult than the PVC. But to make a campaign, we want to make it big, so let's go with HIPS, and that's the real deal behind the thing.
Yeah, go big or go nothing. They say.
So yes.
Also something that might increase the price maybe of the game.
Go big or go nothing, they
say. So yes.
Also something that might increase the price maybe of the game, but which some people talk about and are very interested in. We made a few mentions about it in one of our previous episodes, which are inserts organizers, which some people talk about and are very interested in. We made a few mentions about it in one of our previous episodes, which are inserts organizers. Do you have any plans to have already an insert that is functional already just when you get the box, or do you plan to have some partnership with miniatures, and that's it, miniatures and cards, of course, or something different?
Okay, so that's this is a very important topic, but we can say something here, even if in general we prefer to stay silent on certain topics, especially when it comes to for the petition. In this case, we can just say you that for sure miniatures will come unassembled. So don't expect an organizer that already contains the assembled miniatures. This may be obvious for you all about assembled or unassembled. So not assembled HIPS. And about producing an organizer, we are studying the situation. Probably we would prefer to collaborate with a third party from those. Organizers are a very personal thing for many collectors, hobbyists. So as a general Kickstarter policy also, we prefer to keep things simple and straightforward. We learn simple and straightforward. We learned in our past experience to keep everything regarding production as more straightforward we can, so it can be produced and delivered without many delays and problems. This is our probably all our productions went smooth and with zero problems for the bakers and for the production as well. So since we don't want to split too much resources and time for something very specific and very complicated design for that, but we will announce our decision about organizers only officially in the future, in the very closer to the launch of the campaign.
Okay. As you mentioned as well, the game will be delivered with miniatures which are unassembled. And for the game will be delivered with miniatures which are unassembled. And for the board game crowd, generally people are used to get board games which are with PVC miniatures and which arrive already assembled from the factory. So to some board game people, and not hobby people, this might be maybe from the factory. So to some board game people and not hobby people, this might be maybe not a surprise if you mention it enough. And I think that knowing how you communicate, this will be done. But how do you plan to accompany them into the hobby part of the Sankokushin, which is at least assembling the miniatures, because you don't have to paint them, but you have to at least assemble them to paint.
Yes, we are going to release some assembling guide with the produced product, both in digital and maybe in printed some aid, because most of them were into the hobby, and so they were aware of how to build a miniature. But some of them who simply decided to join the campaign because they were interested in Sankokushin, and it was the first time they decided to buy, are going with this plan for Sankokushin as well. And regarding the painting side of it, I don't really think people need a guide to paint the miniatures, because I'd like them to release their creativity and paint them how they want to do.
Yeah, this is you're right. This is a very important thing that happened when we sent some katsu resin samples to some of our collaborators. Fan should have one as well, if I'm not wrong.
I do. She's right behind me.
In that case, some of them asked for the very precise color scheme of katsu, which we didn't release already her official art. So they correctly wanted to know the color scheme, but we always say that, well, you can try the colors you want. We like to see different way to think of the models we are making. So yes, we will of course release the official color palette that every painter can use, but we like to think that everyone can be free choosing their colors and style.
Yeah, I think that again goes back to the fact that you are building a hobby game, and so the hobby and artistic part of the hobby has to be there.
Yes,
of course.
Since we are still in the miniature section of the questions, do you have plans to do other displays like Izanami, Izanagi, and all their family?
Oh yes, of course. We have already in mind something, but we can't share it right now. But of course, yes, we have a lot of design that we want to bring on Kickstarter with a display miniature set. We already talked so expect another partnership in the near future. And yes, so definitely yes.
I look forward to seeing that.
Okay, there will be bales as well. Don't worry.
Woo, boys!
Yeah, I'm pretty excited as well. I could say I've got one of the I'm pretty excited as well. I could say I've got one of the books for Izanami for the assembly, and the assembly guide is like really good, very clear. Everything's sort of color coded, so you know what's been added to each different picture and everything. It's one of the best like guides I've seen, and it's entirely language independent, which is fantastic. I will say Byaku, though, one of the more challenging models I've ever assembled. Like, honestly, beautiful. But yeah, not for the faint of heart. It wasn't difficult, it was just slow. It was just slow. Yeah, Endless Rain I thought was going to be really difficult, and actually she came together superbly. Like everything made sense where it went, and even her, I guess it's a trident. It looks completely straight, which is like impressive because usually when you put a pole weapon together, in two separate pieces, it ends up being slightly wonky. But the guidelines just clipped it in perfectly, which made me very happy when it just kind of fitted in, and a little bit of fiddling. And I was like, oh, well, there we go, it's straight. And a little bit of fiddling. And I was like, oh, well, there we go, it's straight.
I'm happy to hear that as well.
Yeah,
Hype.
we are very happy of Endless Rain miniature is probably my favorite, to be honest. And about the difficulty of building her, I still had more. The difficulty of building her, I still had more difficulties with Izanami. Yeah, I am certainly worse than Fan when it comes to build miniatures, but Izanami was a very hard task from me.
Yeah, it made sense for me with how everything fit together. So she's currently on my window ledge behind me, she's like a long-term project I'm gradually painting. But I like Jen, which is not only do I love the miniatures, I really love the illustrations. And I was wondering who the inspiration behind the style was, or the artists who inspired the style, which is quite distinct already, and very beautiful. So I'd love to know more.
Yes, we have to split mental art and the character art, which are quite different. For what that concerns the environmental art, we decided to go for a mix of ukiyo-e, who is that is a genre of medieval traditional art, and the modern style together. We also find a really good artist with Voyager illustration. Christian, if you're hearing us, hi. And he's doing an amazing work on that, because he has a strong personality when it comes to creativity. And he is perfectly in sync with our ideas. Regarding the items, I can't talk a lot about that, because you know really well the artist who is Rolinda Tonko. She was the artist of the items of Kingdom Death Monsters. She's pretty.
Yeah, the BK artist. Yeah.
Well, Lorinda is a long acquaintance of ours, because she already worked with.
Actually, the way I knew about the Kickstarter, because I checked their pages of Lorinda, and she made an illustration which was not for Kingdom Death Monster but for So Long My World, so I checked the Kickstarter from there. Big
Decided to go on and work with her, and she's great with drawing the items. And not only that, to be honest, she also designed a couple of works that you already saw on the tree and
the twins. Yes, the twins are the men affected by the disease.
On the first up.
Yes, on the New Year update.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great to know. Actually, I think I love of Lorinda's art is that I don't know how to put this to word, but I'll try. She knows she knows the organicity of what she's painting, because it's not every piece of art from her is actually complete. You don't, for example, when you design resources for monsters or stuff, everything fits into them. It's an entire ecosystem in a painting, in a picture. So that's really lovely art.
Yes, I totally agree with you regarding that. And about the character design, which is the last part of the inspiration for our artistic style, well, this is kind of because we grew up with a lot of anime, a lot of manga, and a lot of video games. So we don't have a specific inspiration for that. We simply saw a lot of things. We decided to take what we like the most, and we try to reproduce and recreate them in a
same feeling.
Exactly.
Do you mean there's not even the tiny bit of Xenogears in it?
In this case, Rika, we like to introduce the specificity with some generic words, but it was about to come the time to say some generic words, but it was about to come the time to say a couple of names.
Oh, well,
Your main inspirations?
Final Fantasy, of
Yeah,
course.
of course.
And, there is another video game, which really impacted me a lot. There is another video game, which really impacted me a lot with this Tenchu. I don't know if any one of you knows it. Then there is Red Ninja, another game which is pretty rare. And also Kuon, which is a game for PlayStation 2 back in the day. And
well, in my case, someone it is fun because one of our followers on Facebook is a great fan like me of the Guilty Gear and the Blaze Blue series, and he's very in finding out all the references that I like to insert in some cards, some quotes from these two games. So I can say my main inspiration for my part of art direction is certainly Arc System video direction is certainly Arc System video games like Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue.
Yeah, I was a King of Fighters / Street Fighter type, so I won't catch the Guilty Gear reference.
So you won't know when there's a small girl wielding a giant anchor. So you won't know when there's a small girl wielding a giant anchor. You'll be like, what's that?
All games I don't know, but it's fine.
Yeah, I keep sleeping.
Right. Well, speaking of which, slightly related, I was quite interested in knowing, like, what the main themes running through the game's design and story are. I like it very much when a game has some coherent running themes or recurring minor themes, whether it's on an incidental short scale with like a set of encounters.
This is my favorite questions, our favorite question, to be frank, because we love to tell stories. We love to speak of what we love, what we studied, what we. So the themes, the recurring themes of Sankokushin were one of the biggest parts in the development of the project. I really want to repeat this, to be very clear on this. Sankokushin is a game, a hobby project, and a way to tell, a way to speak of certain themes that are very dear to us and part of our background in our studies. So, needless to say, the main theme is the sacrifice in its historical and philosophical meaning. Someone may have noticed that under each update, under each big update, we put some partial bibliography, some to the books, the essays that inspired our work when it came to tell the story, to create the environment. So there is a Italian writer that is his name is Roberto Calasso, is very very famous in certain situations, and his teachings, his essays about the history of sacrifice and the links of the sacrifice philosophy with the hunt philosophy, all spread across the humanity, was a very strong inspiration for this for the main topic. After that, well, the other recurring themes are the hunt, as I just said, and astronomy. The movement of planets and stars are very important in even just in a gameplay part of the Sankokushin, which is the calendar. That is a very important part of the gameplay, since you may already know is limited, and you have to carefully spend the time you have. And the time is tracked with a calendar that refers to the many astronomical events like the solstices, equinox, and all of them have an impact in the story and in the gameplay. And then after this, every single character, in any case, every social bond, every boss has their own personal themes to be treated. You can expect Endless Rain to explore the theme of and I don't want to spoil too much, so better to stop here. But every boss has their own personal themes to be explored, and they all refer to philosophy and psychology. Refer to philosophy and psychology, which are very dear to us.
Yeah, fantastic. That's pretty much what I hope to hear, and that does make me very excited. It's going to be fun to delve into not just like the physical aspects of what these bosses are like, but also their psychology, their thoughts and feelings and things. It's going to be a lot of fun. Right. Well, so this one this is my insert kind of like here, which is when I grew up on Journey to the West. I absolutely love it to pieces, and I particularly like I was a young child, read the stuff, but then I got back into it when Anthony CU released his like revised edition of the Journey to the West. Whether Sun Wukong, also known as Son Goku, and maybe some of his traveling companions might one day appear in Sankokushin. Because, I mean, Sun Wukong is like, he's my number one all-time favorite character in anything ever.
Well, at the moment, we didn't plan for something like that, but an idea for our related event. So maybe you'll find something in the core game. Anyway, we are always trying to think about folklore and related things, not only related to Japanese folklore, but also and related things, not only related to Japanese folklore, but also Chinese and Indian culture. So we will surely add something in the future. If not in the core game, we are looking for expansion, and then we are definitely making other looking for expansion, and then we are definitely making other things for that.
That's really all I needed to hear. That has me tremendously excited. If I didn't have to stay here at this desk and talk you through some more, I'd go for a little like jog about now. So getting like jog about now. So getting back to something which we've actually seen, could you tell us more about the moth, what the inspiration behind it is, and also how did you feel about how much of a meme favorite this became so quickly with people?
Well, actually, I'm pretty happy about. the fact that the moth became a a meme in just a little time.
Oh,
Actually,
Fan asks me to tell you that it says meme in English.
I did not ask that. I just liked correcting you about it.
Yeah, F you.
well, the idea we had behind the moth was because I read time ago that the moths were considered to be witches' souls which were trying to find. When we decided to work on new bosses, I thought that the idea was nice, even though I recreated her in a different way. So don't expect a witch for this. You will see soon enough, but now I can't talk too much because I can't do spoilers. But then that's why we decided to moth, and actually I really like moth themselves, and I was eager to put an insect-like boss in the game.
Sorry, I just wanted to say like that I love insects as well. I did an internship at like museum. I love insects as well. I did an internship at like museum in the entomology department, and this moth illustration just makes me really happy every time I look at it.
I'm very looking forward to see how will you paint the moth. So yes, it's very important to say don't expect. It's very important to say don't expect witches. Don't expect. We didn't spoil anything, so it's very important. I don't want anyone to think that the reason because we thought of moths has anything to do with the in-game story of this specific moth.
Okay. Okay. I have a next question. So I feel like that every chapter in the game, as it's presented to us, is actually not entirely good or bad. It's a good people who did bad things, and there are bad guys which are actually not that bad. And when you get to inspect their motivations. So this will be just a nice characterization, or we will use this in gameplay actively?
Well, this is another wonderful question because directly aims to one of the most important aspects of Sankokushin. So Sankokushin, yes, it's all about not sticking to a binary good and evil axis. So you should not expect demon kings that want to destroy the world for the sake of it, and do not expect lawful good paladins that fight for everything that is righteous. All our characters are torn between right and wrong, so that they are human, even those who aren't human, but it's just a metaphor. They are human, fallible, and sometimes despicable, while the bad guys have punished them. That's all on the player's shoulders. So if a specific boss has done something that is particularly unacceptable for that player or players, that playing group, they may decide to just allow you to do.
So I can basically I can decide to kill someone or spite, or I can decide to become friends with an enemy because just I feel like so.
Yeah, exactly. I'd reward a little what you say. I'd reward a little what you say. It's not to become a friend with any enemy. It's not so easy. Their personality is strong, and some of the bosses cannot become friends. But friends is a very strong word. They may become allies or just decide to ignore you or leave the place, or it depends, of course, on the specific boss personality. There is a boss that I can think, say which ones, of course, that can actually become allies and be playable during encounters.
Whoa.
Or in other case, the specific relationship you will develop with that boss will lead to different endings. The boss may leave. So it depends. It depends on their personality and how you will treat them. There will come a moment in which you can decide if to kill or not a specific boss or bosses, and this will change things, of course. But not only, even just the way you fight with them changes subtly their personalities.
So this is great. Actually, this could be a big step up on emergent narrative.
Yeah, of course, we think that that's one of the main points of the game. In fact, to come back to your question, yes, their ambivalence has repercussions on the gameplay. Back to your question, yes, their ambivalence has repercussions on the gameplay. They can change depending on your action, as we said a few ago.
And I guess the campaign will change entirely.
Of course.
Yes.
In some case entirely, in some case just a...
I guess the campaign will change entirely.
Of course.
Yes.
In some case entirely, in some case just a part of the campaign will become different. It of course depends on each case.
Okay, great.
Now we are moving on a bit to the design and development questions, and like hearing about different directions the relationship with the antagonists can go. What were the biggest challenges when designing Sankokushin so far? How did you overcome them?
Well, the main challenge was to keep the game simple, have a simple system with everything. We have social bonds, we have bosses interlacement, and we wanted to make it meaningful, but to keep them simple. When we first started to work on the game, our first interaction with the characters were a lot complicated. We had a lot of things to have, things that could be different. So there were a lot of different possibilities. But then we realized that the players might even forget some pieces of what they did in the previous playthrough. So we decided that maybe we should, and we managed to make them still deep, but increasingly easy to track without sacrificing the personality of the characters. Since when we decided to do this game, we wanted to make living characters, and we wanted them to flesh out. Every character is different one from another, and everyone has bosses, but also the social bonds. So we had to do them to shine when doing social bonds.
Oh, that's great. So actually, I in the next question, what is the single thing which excites you the most about your game
system and the psychology that is behind them? We work at our best to create these living characters and their stories and actually participation within the story. So it's not a matter of the main characters playable and the bossy NPC that lives in Yamashiro, which comes to Yamashiro and can also leave Yamashiro, because whenever you start a social bond with someone, your decision and also what you do with bosses and during events may lead them to leave Yamashiro. And in that way, that social bond is done forever. You can't go on. You can't recall the people to come back to Yamashiro. Once they left the land, they left for good. To come back to Yamashiro. Once they left the land, they left for good.
Yeah, that sounds like a playtesting nightmare.
That's the point of the previous question. Yes, the main problem at the beginning was exactly this one. We thought a lot of possibilities, a lot of branching stories. We had to streamline everything and to make everything more meaningful. The main problem, as Enrico said, is that if a single story of a character is so much complicated and can lead to it's possible that a gaming group that stopped playing for 1 month, for instance, could not perfectly remember everything that happened to a single character, considering there are many NPCs. So the keeping all these psychological and narrative depth, but making it simpler. This took, I don't exaggerate, I think the first year of the development.
Yes.
Yeah, I can actually see that. Yeah, of course. The branching storylines path again. So we can expect multiple endings or open endings, or shall we go for a single ending with a single final boss fight in the game or in the campaign?
Well, allow me to be a little like like the life of all mankind according to Eastern philosophy and also Western psychoanalysis. I must say, Yamashiro is trapped in a destiny of repetition of the same mistakes. So you will see many different endings, different time loops, and here we introduce another theme that is important. Maybe you already know that, but there is a sort of time loop, time travel mechanic in Sankokushin. And this leads to answer your question. While with the same terrible destiny of the city, you can explore different timelines and different endings, of course. Different endings, different final bosses, or just different game overs, if game over has not a particular sense in Sankokushin. Game over has not a particular sense in Sankokushin, as every time a campaign ends in a way or another, something is brought to the next loop. So speaking of game over, it's not very appropriate.
You're speaking of time loops.
Speaking of game over, it's not very appropriate.
You're speaking of time loops and the fact that you mentioned previously that the game is in a limited time. I have a big Zelda Majora's Mask flashback.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. We speak the same language, it seems. To finish answering language, it seems. To finish answering to the different endings, yes, there is a true ending also. To
Yes.
discover which one, you have to do certain things. So expect a super secret final boss somewhere.
Ooh, we'll go for the
Oh,
true
that's
ending
cool.
then.
Secret.
We have an objective in life now.
So, what would you say it's the aspect that makes Sankokushin stand out compared to other boss battler games? Let's say Townfolk Tussle or Ant Trespass or Kingdom Death. Like, what's the one thing that makes Sankokushin different from those?
Okay, this was a question that we actually thought to ask you to be removed because we don't like a lot to do anything that could look like comparative marketing. It's not our personality to say, hey, buy our game because it's better than. It's not exactly our. No, it's a pleasure to answer, but we also like to say this. We think the rising tide brings all the boats above. So we love to think there is no need of strict, and it's just not our personality. But the question has a sense, of course. So we decided it was a good idea to answer. We think that the main difference between the other boss battles is how our narrative and gameplay are focused on psychology. Trying to understand a foe's personality is an actual part of the gameplay. A foe's personality is an actual part of the gameplay. Here we make an example that we didn't reveal before in any other mean. You have to understand a foe's personality, and it is an actual part of the gameplay because you can actively foresee the possible effects, for instance, of the next artificial intelligence card, as every card has on its back one of the psychological traits icon that obviously lead to different effects according to that boss personality, and each boss personality is different. To get closer to a boss soul, a boss personality, will actively help you in when it comes to fight them, for instance, or to make the right choices to get what you need in the more narrative part of the game.
So
I want to say that it's not just trial and error. It's not only that. It's not just that kind of philosophy. If you let's make an example. The Skull Samurai, one of the most beloved bosses so far. We spoke not so much about him, but we see the most beloved bosses so far. We spoke not so much about him, but we see many followers really like him. So the Skull Samurai boss, if you try to intimidate such an individual that is clearly stronger than you, and by far such an individual that is clearly stronger than you, and by far, you have to expect something different than if you try to intimidate a wild tiger that is hiding from mankind like Biako. So it's very meaningful, the weight of the psychological part.
BGG boards will probably be full of failure stories, which will be epic to read. And most will be mine, probably. Okay, so going on. About this game of knowing your boss and playing and crafting. Oh, Audrey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So about this game, how is the game balance actually? Everything is equally viable. There's no intrinsically bad choices, or is it a loose balance? Like there are strictly better options than others?
Well, our purpose here is to keep everything. Here it comes another of our game design inspiration, which is Shozo Kaga from Fire Emblem series. If someone has tried any Fire Emblem game, they know. Perfect. They know that always are some characters coming to the main group that are very underpowered compared to your current party. Let's call party the group of characters in Fire Emblem, which is more an army than a party. So you may have a new character that compared to the others, but if you take the effort of bringing that character with you and training that character and using that character, you will be greatly rewarded in the future. So that's our idea. There are things intrinsically worse than other, but there is always a reward at the end of the path.
Okay, so this is basically to say there is an easy way to do stuff, but if you go the hard route, you could end up with something viable and powerful.
Yeah.
You could end up with something viable and powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
We are going to switch to the questions which are a bit more centered about gameplay. And I'm going to open that session with the question about if there will be some kind of quick story mode which will be about if there will be some kind of quick story mode which will be basically enough to play in an afternoon with a quick campaign that you could use as an introduction or a demo, for instance, if you have friends that want to know the game but don't want to commit right away for a big campaign. So will there be something like that, or won't there be?
Yes, we are working on that. We'll prepare some episodes that will be enjoyable for those who don't want to do a full campaign or have just an afternoon to play, just as you said, of course. And also, we are working in the way that if I don't know, you're playing the game just once, and then after a month you want to play the whole campaign. If you remember to register what you did in the previous time, you may be able to your full campaign. If you don't want, you can start the full campaign without thinking about what you did in the past. But of course, we are trying to do something that leads the people to play both the full campaign and the single shot of the episode.
I think that's something that's very interesting because when we have that's a great way to have something ready to play.
We can make an example in some things we revealed in the past. It appeared the words invisible scenario. So the invisible scenarios are these little locked in the main campaign and can be played outside of the main campaign, but still have some influence on the main campaign. So you can play the single episodes you unlocked in your main campaign with your friends that just want to. You still will do something for your main campaign.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so now a direct and quick question. Given that this campaign branches in significant ways and that it's impossible to cover most of the story in one playthrough, how much of the entire script we will be able to experience in one go?
Well, more than script, I would talk about possible social bonds or bosses, which are the core of the game. I believe that 60% of it for a one-go campaign.
Yeah, I'd say 60-70% can be seen. Considering mutually exclusive bosses, social bonds, or story branches, I think you're right. Bosses, social bonds, or story branches, I think you're right.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I was actually fearing for the 20% or something. Like play 40 campaigns before you know the entire story.
No,
Play 40 campaigns before you know the entire story.
no way.
Okay.
Our is to make you get the true ending, even in your second and third campaign if you played very well.
Yes.
This is after we are still tuning this part. We want the game to be difficult. We want the campaigns to be not too long, to not take too much time. So we want a player not to be forced, exactly as you say, many campaigns to see everything. We will make the game as doing more than 2 or 3 campaigns is rewarding, and there is always new stuff to try to see. But the true ending, to see all the story, for instance, in 2 or 3 campaigns, true if you play very well.
Okay, there's not the right answer to this because probably the right approach to most players is to make not too long campaigns, but there will always be people who will want more in this case.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What are your estimates on overall fiddliness? Like how many parts or resources, etc., do you have to track in a single session? Like in certain games, we know and we all played, I think, there can be a lot of bookkeeping and writing things down, keeping track of. So how does it look like in Sankokushin?
Or move tokens.
Yeah, or move tokens.
This is an important and very interesting question. I'd say in this case it's very hard to answer without making any comparison. We'd say slightly more than Kingdom Death Monster, but far less than Gloomhaven, if it does make sense.
That definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So, for instance, in combat, you have many variables than Kingdom Death. The psychology system, of course, needs another deck to manage, for
And
instance.
tokens as well.
And tokens as well, of course. About bookkeeping, well, in combat, almost zero. For instance, in combat, almost zero. For instance, you will not score on your character sheet during the combat, during the encounter. It may happen that you have to record during the encounter. It may happen that you have to record a new skill acquired during the encounter, but that's all. You don't have to manage with pen and paper your stats, for instance. So encounters are very straightforward that way. When you go to the city, there is a little more bookkeeping, of course, but in that case, I'd say no more than Kingdom Death. Just a little more components than Kingdom Death because of the bosses are more layers than Kingdom Death bosses. That must be said. Yes.
Okay, I have to ask this. So a monster is 3 decks?
Yeah, then depending on the enemy, because you have for certain the encounter deck, the artificial intelligence deck, then the psychology deck, which may differ from boss to boss, but generally there is always a psychology deck. Then you have the wounds deck, because each boss has specific wounds that happen when enough damage, and they vary according to the squares you attack the boss from.
Oh, that's cool.
It depends from the size of each boss. For instance, Endless Rain has only one wound zone, while Byakko has two because it's bigger, simply. And the effects of these wounds change a lot according to where you strike. Even for the loots, for instance, if you attack, if you attack Byakko on the back, you will loot differently than attacking him from the front. So if you want certain gears, you have to aim from the back. It's just
a tail, for
example. You have to aim from the back. It's just
a tail, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, and how long will be a session and a complete playthrough?
Well, talking about a session, I believe that we already had, and we stayed in the 1 hour and a half mark time, actually. And regarding the full playthrough, maybe 20 fights.
Okay.
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, we are aiming about 20 fights. Yeah. Another thing that is interesting to say about this is that generally we played for 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, actually.
Yes, sometimes.
From 1 hour and a half or 2 hours. But it's very dependent on the gaming group rhythm and choices. There is not a fixed settlement hunt showdown system like in Kingdom of Monster. You choose what to do. For instance, you may spend several weeks are the years. You may spend several weeks are the years, to speak Kingdom Death Monster language. You can spend several weeks crafting and speaking with social bond NPCs, or you can fight every week. This, of course, has a different impact on the how much time a single session takes.
Great.
I think you mentioned before that it's possible to play through an entire campaign without fighting even once. Like, is that something which is actually like viable playthrough, or is it just like something you can do?
Yeah, you will lose, of course.
Oh, come on. I've won video games with a full pacifist run. It's my favourite way to play. 0 on the kill count. Thank you.
Sankokushin Undertale.
But actually, we didn't say you can't run an entire campaign without fighting. We say that we can do a full campaign without killing, which is different. The encounter will be there always. The encounters not end necessarily with the total death of the party. Encounters not end necessarily with the total death of the party or the boss. As we said previously, during the encounter, the boss may go away. You can decide to go away as well. You can try to boost your psychology and try to talk with the people. Boost your psychology and try to talk with the people. The boss, the human, the animal, I don't know, who we will find in front of you. And people can retreat after you spoke with them, or they can decide to leave at once. It doesn't end with a single a fight with a killing. So you, the player, are able to decide to finish an opponent or not. Of course, your decision will have on the subsequent session of the game. That means that, for instance, if you go to kill a boss, which can be a playable character in the future, whenever you kill him or her, it depends, you can't use it later, of course.
Okay, that dissipates a few doubts. Okay, now saving the best for last, at least for me, because actually this was a simple question, but since we began talking, it became more articulated. Because actually we know that we know for sure that people can get extra dead in the game, and there are enemies which can become playable allies. You said. So this is it. Campaign with custom characters and allies. We know we can run a campaign with completely custom characters because you said character interaction. I guess like stuff like Umeka's father could not relate to a custom character like they would do with Umeka. But is there something else in store for them to compensate this, or is just the satisfaction of playing your own story within the story?
We must say something. The game is thought to have a procedural structure, so that it can be easily replayable many times, always finding new things that didn't happen in the previous campaign. The main characters, even if they have their own strong personality and they are linked to the other characters in the story, they are not the main center of the game. So the difference, the actual gameplay difference between a custom character and an in-game character, speaking of the for instance the 4 stunting heroes, is not that much. We are the 4 stunting heroes is not that much. We are preparing the dedicated quests for custom characters that will be randomly chosen based on the personality traits chosen during the creation. So even if you play a custom character, you can have a similar, not the same of course, but a similar depth in the story, in the gameplay of the main character. We are trying to keep them at the same level. Of course, custom characters will be just will not just feel empty compared to the main characters, exactly because main characters are not too much the center of the story. The center of the story are the bosses and the social bonds mainly. Then the game, which wouldn't be possible if the main characters are strictly bound to every campaign event.
Yeah, that's a good call, actually.
Yeah, it's exciting to me as well because everybody knows that the best characters in any series are always the antagonists. Knows that the best characters in any series are always the antagonists.
Yes.
We agree.
Or the cats.
Biako is both.
Yeah, so he's a cat has an antagonist.
It's a catagonist.
The cat is always an antagonist.
It's a catagonist.
The cat is always an antagonist. They have their own agenda.
I seriously need to talk with my pirate kitty.
Okay, so are we satisfied?
Yes!
Yay!
More than that, positively exciting, really like wonderful and engaging. And I'm excited about this, like I've always have been, but I'm more excited about this on a new level because some of the stuff you've talked about reminded me of Sleeping Gods, which is like my current darling, and I think it's going to be a critical darling for the rest. Touch on that and say I get the same feeling when you're talking about this as I do when I sit down before playing Sleeping Gods. I can't speak more highly than that right now.
So let's hurry pushing out this game.
Yes. Okay, but it was a pleasure for us as well. Of course, we have to apologize for our strong accent.
Yes.
We all have to do that except Fen.
Not as bad as
Hey,
mine.
what you're talking about, mate? I've got a terrible accent also.
Yeah,
Got
but
an
that's an
awful one.
accent that's legitimate for speaking English. Or known.
Yeah, admittedly. But I come from a country.
Known.
Yeah, admittedly. But I come from a country filled with awful accents, so. But let's not get started on that. And that's all we have time for in this episode. You can catch us over at www.patreon.com/thelaststandee or as The Last Standee on Twitter. You can catch Last Standee on Twitter. You can catch Access Mundi Games on Facebook or at their website, and they will let us all know when they're ready to just send out this wonderful creation to Kickstarter, and we can all just jump up in the air like Fry, waving our cash around and shout, "Take my money!" And
Goodbye.
Audrey,
Bye bye.
David,
Bye.
Francesco,
Bye.
Enrica.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Myself. Bye. And remember that today the second E in Stand E is for Endless Rain.